Well, thank you for sitting down with me.
My pleasure.
And let me pick your brain for.
Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I've always wanted to talk to you about is how you kind of look at the guitar, because your style of play is so sort of refined in a certain area.
Right. Well, I think about chords much more than I think about single note lines. Harmony is really a big deal in my mind anyway, which I think lends itself to me being good at chords, but then not very good at soloing. You know, that's my biggest weak point. I've been thinking a lot lately about where my strengths and weaknesses, they overlap. I think my strengths are my weaknesses, and my weaknesses are my strengths. And so I know on the instrument, my weakness is playing single note stuff, you know. I get nervous playing over jazz changes, I have a hard time with that. However, if it's just the chords, I can do that all day and all night and not have any problem. And I remember when I understood the way chords fit together. It was, I was about 17 years old, and I was upstairs in my room, and it just a light went on, and I understood that when you play major scale, the first note in relation to the third note is what gives you major and minor. Minor, major, you know? And then I understood that fifths were neither minor or major, and that sevenths on a major chord were usually a half step below the octave,
right?
You know? And just understanding that in a flash changed my guitar playing literally overnight. I mean, just boom.
What were you playing before that?
You know, I got a guitar book that showed me how to play all the cowboy chords, you know? And I would do that, and I would play bar chords. But I wouldn't put chords together in a logical fashion as far as inside of one key. I was just throwing shit out there. Sorry, maybe I should cut
No, yeah, okay, that's all you want.
All right. So, and ironically, I think a lot of the stuff I wrote before I understood the way chords fit together was much hipper.
Yeah, I just had that too, where I went back through a lot of old stuff, and I was like, well, some of it I kind of don't like. It makes me cringe, but the idea was so pure and honest. It was like it wasn't touched by anybody's influence. It was just me, or that's how I felt as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how that works.
I remember reading that Paul McCartney said he never learned how to read music because he was afraid it would stifle his creativity or his writing. And I know that when I learned the rules, I became a much more conservative writer. Before I knew the rules, I just wrote what sounded good to my ear. And I've also heard, and I think this is true, that there's one rule in music, which is, if it sounds good, it is good.
Right.
And that's it.
That's it.
And I kind of, in learning the ins and outs of the way harmony works, I became fearful of breaking the rules, you know. But, it's important. It's like you have to learn grammar in elementary school to become a good writer, in adulthood.
Well, I think there's things biologically, humans are designed interpret to hear as pleasure, and those are kind of like the scientific models of kind of figuring that out. Yeah. But I think to me, it's so much cooler if someone can be that person that goes, look at this model, look how cool this is, Yeah. Or like, the Tesla, like a Tesla or something. Someone who's like just rocks the world of it,
Totally.
And what's weird is even with cowboy chords, you can do that sometimes. So it's
absolutely.
That's why it's kind of like maddening to think of or at least for me to be like, well, theory or artistic, expression, or to me that's what makes music really fun, because it's almost like these magical spells that if you perform them right, they're so powerful and moving.
Totally.
I don't know. I think that the technology today sort of leads it in sort of one way or the other, and it's hard to get where you are, where you're like, I got it, understand it, and now I'm applying it different ways.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky. I mean, when you learn the rules, then suddenly you feel like you're going to get in trouble if you break them, you know?
Yeah, because like who's listening in the audience that also knows the rules? And,
yeah. And that never goes away.
No.
Or at least it hasn't for me yet, you know. Shoot, within my own band, I get nervous about songs I bring in, you know. There were songs on our new CD, and the band was like, I don't think we should do this one.
Right.
But I'm a lot older than those guys, you know, and I just decided, no, we're doing it.
I was just going to say, I think you have to go by what your gut feeling says, because at some point, other people aren't looking out for you, or they're not coming from where you're coming from, or, you know, even if it's a failed idea, at least you tried. You know what I'm saying? At least you were like, had conviction behind it. Because you would always think, oh, maybe if I would have got one of my gut instinct, maybe, you know, more people would have been turned on, you know.
Yeah.
That's always my feeling behind that. But I think it's important to have also, like, not a mentor, but someone who you can really trust with your music.
Because it only takes one person to tell you, no, you're doing that all wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, it crushes you.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, when I was like 16, I asked my parents for guitar lessons, and they sent me to a guy around the corner. And it was really interesting. He was the guy who told me that, you know, it used to be you would be burned at the stake for playing that interval. You know, that interval was evil. It was the devil interval.
Right.
And that was exciting for me. But then at one point he said, you know, you're just doing everything wrong. It would have been better if you had not started playing by yourself. It would have been better if you'd started taking lessons from day one. And then I was like, well, guess what? This is my last lesson with you.
Yeah,
I'll never come back. Right. Christian, who plays saxophone in my band, said something the other night that just rocked me to my core. He said, music, I just got chills thinking about it. He said, music is not a proficiency contest. It's an honesty contest. And it does not matter how good you are. It matters how honest you are.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
Which is why you can hear some kid just starting out at an open mic and be moved.
Oh, yeah.
Or go to the symphony and fall asleep.
Exactly.
You know, because it's not how slick it is, it's how raw it is.
And it's so, I think you can totally tell when there's honesty there and when someone's trying to fake it, or someone's trying to, like, you know, but there's this one girl, her name's Whiskey Ginger, and I was like, she either has mastered the art of making a mistake, or it's just so honest and pure that it's like moving to everyone in the room and everyone stops what they're doing. And it's, you know, it's super powerful, these like little simple ukulele songs and this like huge red afro, and then she forgets, and then it's great, you know, and it doesn't even matter if she made it through the song or not. Everyone's just sort of like blown away by the honesty of it.
Yeah, I think I know the girl you're talking about. She blew me away once at an open mic.
Yeah.
She played, silenced the room, and then threw her ukulele.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right.
Up next, Tommy Holloran.
Right. How do you follow that? You know? Yeah, it's honesty really matters. You know, George Burns said about acting, the key is sincerity. Once you can fake that, the rest is easy. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can do that in a movie, but when you're on stage, you really can't fake it, you know? No. There's no phoning it in. People intuitively know when they're being bullshitted.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Or someone's just, I think everyone's been there where they're just like, all right, we're playing our last song and I'm barely making it through it and I don't care and it's awful and I'm just getting me off stage. And so, Stephen Droz of the Flaming Lips, he's one of my favorite musicians, and he said there's like 3 levels of performing, and one is everything's going great, everyone's hitting their notes, the crowd's digging it, awesome. The second is it's going well, we're barely holding it together, but at any moment it could go off the rails. And the third is everything's going wrong, get us off stage. Who booked this gig?
Kill me now. Right. And you know, in my experience, those levels of gigs, no matter how much I practice, I can't just maintain the first level. You know, in my entire life, I played 300 gigs last year, right? So probably 100 of those were, God help me. 100 of them were like, this is okay. 100 of them were like, great. I'm the greatest musician in the world, you know? And I think all of those feelings are legitimate and true and persistent through our lifetime as musicians.
That's something I too struggle with, is like, even with the 100 great gigs, it's sometimes at the end of the day you're like, they were great, but do I want to do it again? Yeah. And in terms of, was it really effective, and am I really doing something that's moving people, and is this worth it? I mean, do you ever think about that, or do you just like, do you just grind it, or do you know, how do you get through, like, it's just, you know, it's frustrating, like, calling people, trying to book, people saying no, people saying yes, trying to get your band together, trying to figure out how you're going to get there, and what keeps you, what's your drive, what keeps the drive up?
Well, it's what I love to do. No, that's not entirely true. I do love it, but I also hate it, you know? And about once a week, I'm like, damn it, I should just go get a job at the Taco Bell, and, you know, I'll be fine, you know? Because it'd be a lot less stressful. There's something within me, though, that just loves this instrument, you know? Whether or not people are at gigs, I'll still sit on my floor and play for a couple hours every day, you know? I mean, the gig thing is tricky, though, because when you're there in a room, depending on the gig, the expectations, sometimes you're there to be background music. I remember the first time I played this particular restaurant in St. Louis, the owner said, okay, there was a brick wall in the dining room. He said, pick one of those bricks and look at it all night long. Don't make eye contact with the patrons. I was like, wow, okay. So I'm supposed to be just Muzak here in person, you know? And that's okay, but it's somewhat demoralizing. And then...
it's demeaning in a weird way, too, because you're not... I'm sure that you're like, well, I spent all this time working so hard just to be background music.
Right.
You know, you want people to buy your shit, you want people to listen to it, the emotion that you put into these songs.
Yeah, I mean, I write songs, I perform, you know, I discovered this in high school. I was a theater guy, and then I started playing music, and I was like, oh my God, I love being on stage. And I think every performing musician, or at least most of them, have that. Like, I want to be on stage. I want people to see me. I want to tell you what is in my heart, you know. I want to sing this song that I wrote for you, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and it's important to me. It's like, you know, little kids doing tricks for their parents, you know. Mom, look at me, no hands, you know. And when you're not allowed to do that on a gig, it makes the gig hard.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's the other extreme where they do want you to do that, you know. And there are times when I can't. You know, there are times when I get to the gig and they expect me to be, you know, the moon and the stars. And I'm like, well...
bring 400 people.
Yeah. I'm like, well, dude, I got a guitar, you know, and I will sing songs as well as I can, but I'm not... You know what, I think the problem there is that a lot of venues want the musicians to be, well, venues is the wrong word. A lot of restaurants and cafes where I play expect the musicians to be the draw.
Yeah, I was just gonna lead you there and just be like, it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, like, there should be people here for me to play to. Right. I'm the cherry on top, and all of a sudden when you're coming into a place and you're like, well, you only drew 20 people, so here's $40. It's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
You know? It's tough.
And I've kind of gotten to the point where now I try to only play gigs where I know I'm going to succeed. Because I've had so many experiences where the club owners are mad at the end of the night, and I felt like I did a great job, you know? And that's not cool. I'm not anybody's business model but my own. You know, my job is to have my own career be successful based on my own merits, you know, based on my hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make another restaurant be successful. I can't make a club be successful.
Not at all.
No. That's really their problem.
Nobody could.
Nobody could. No.
Nobody could.
No.
So.
And the hipper venues understand that.
Yeah.
You know. And one here in town that's really, really good about it is Off-Broadway. Like, they know.
Mm-hmm.
They know what is going to work for them and what is not going to work for them.
Yeah.
And they won't set up musicians for failure.
No, they won't.
No. And a lot of musicians maybe get bent out of shape. Like, oh, I can't get the gig I wanted Off-Broadway. Well, Off-Broadway is really looking out for the musician. Yeah. At the same time, they're looking out for themselves.
Yeah.
It has to be a mutually beneficial agreement or arrangement, or somebody's getting screwed, you know, and
right.
That doesn't work.
And then someone's gonna quit, or someone's, you know.
Yes.
The people don't understand that if you play to an empty room every time you go out, eventually you're not gonna want to play music, and then eventually that bar's gonna close.
Right.
And you're not gonna have a place to play music.
That's right.
So.
And then on the flip side, you have a place like Schlafly,
Mm-hmm.
where they don't need music.
No.
If Schlafly never hired another band, they wouldn't be any less successful for it. Mm-hmm. They're really successful because they have great beer and great food, and their business model is good. And so music for them really is the cherry on top. It's the thing they're giving to their customers, their patrons. Like, we appreciate you. Enjoy this music that we like.
Right.
You know?
We spent $200 on this
for you
to make this better.
Exactly. And that's the sort of place where I like to go, because that's where I will succeed. Mm-hmm. If there are people there, I'll do well, you know? I mean, but I'm not a draw. I think a lot of that has to do with how much I play. Shit, it's been 20 years of this, playing gigs all the time, you know? Mm-hmm. And so my close friends stopped coming out, about 17 years ago,
right.
You know? So, because I just can't expect anybody to come out to gigs every night, you know?
No.
It's hard for me to do it. You know?
Exactly.
Right. So, that's it.
It is. I mean, I was talking to a girl, she was starting her own bar, and I was like, hey, you're good at music there. And she's like, honestly, it turns away just as many people as it brings in.
Yeah.
Which is also the struggle, too. There's a lot of people that just don't understand that their metal band isn't going to be right for that place. They just want a gig.
Yeah.
And it's actually detrimental to everybody, because it almost ruins it for the people, especially, you know, that come from the safer areas of the suburbs to the city to see some music.
Right.
And they go to a bar, and then they went to a bar in kind of a seedy part of town in their eyes, at least.
Sure.
And they saw something that was just awful, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a mutual, you know.
And really, the concentric circles just go out. I mean, it's bad for the band, mm-hmm. It's bad for the venue, it's bad for the neighborhood, it's bad for the perceptions of the people who came from the county.
Yep.
You know.
And that's a problem St. Louis fights too. Is there's so many places you could get a gig, where other cities, you literally have to like maybe fist fight somebody to get a gig. Like if you were in New Orleans, they break out in the street. You know, they break out in the corners.
Totally.
You know, if you're in New York, it's super hard to get a gig anywhere.
Yeah, it's pay to play.
Yeah.
Right. Well, again, I think that's where St. Louis, just like every individual, our strengths and our weaknesses are the same, you know? It is not hard to work in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. All you really have to do is ask for gigs. And most places
will give it to you.
Yeah. At least once, mm-hmm. You know, and if you do a halfway decent job, they'll have you back, you know? It's a lot of putting yourself out there. It's a lot of being willing to accept the rejection, you know? And it's a lot of also being willing to, like, put in the work and be good and understand the bigger picture. But you can work in St. Louis 5 nights a week. And that's the great thing about St. Louis. It's not hard to work in. And really, the level of musicianship in St. Louis
is pretty high.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I
mean, I'd say this is a world-class music town.
Right.
Any given night, you can go hear great music in any genre. Yeah. Yes, you have to know where to go.
Right.
Yeah.
As any city would, though.
Well, I think cities like New Orleans have built their entire identity around this.
Right.
And all you got to do in New Orleans is just show up, mm-hmm. and you will be entertained on street corners, you know, and in the airport, you know, I mean, everywhere, you know.
Right.
St. Louis does not do that. But St. Louis also doesn't have tourism. You know, New Orleans has people who go there on expense accounts. You know, they're spending the boss's money, so it's no problem to throw a $20 $20 bill in a tip bucket. St. Louis has none of that. But we do have, for whatever reason, clubs that love having live music. And really, we have a city of people that have come to expect it.
You also have a community that sort of, especially with KDHX, it's this community that other cities don't have. Which is pretty powerful, and we're pretty lucky that we do have something like that. Because people literally that they're behind it, they listen to it, and it's like if you're in the music community, it's like you better support it, man. Because if you don't, if you take this for granted, it's gonna go away and it's gonna suck. You think it sucks now? Holy shit! If there wasn't KDHX,
I would bet there are not 5 stations like KDHX in the world.
Yeah.
I bet there aren't 5. And that we have one in St. Louis is wonderful, and it's a gift and a treasure. And they're so supportive of St. Louis music, and it's a wonderful thing.
You're doing pro bono. I mean, no one's making $1 million a KDHX.
No, nobody's getting rich off that. Yeah, it's really for the community. It's a great thing. Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, and thinking about that John F. Kennedy quote, the question is not what can I do or what can KDHX do for me.
Right.
The question is what can I do for KDHX.
Yeah, because you're gonna get, the more you put into it, the more you're gonna get out of it.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
How do you deal with sort of, I don't know, the fear factor of it all in terms of putting yourself out there and at the end of the day, it's like some of us will never get rich off this shit. So if we're 60, 65 years old, looking in the future, it's kind of fearful of what's gonna happen, And it's how do you deal with that? Is this a sort of just drive that you have, or you just know it's right, or it's gotta work sort of thing?
It has to. I mean, I don't have a plan B.
Mm-hmm.
I knew early on that if I had a plan B, I would take it. And so I can't have a plan B. I have to only have plan A. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I'm fraught with anxiety over it. I mean, I have no fingernails because I just, and I lose sleep over concerns about money and how am I going to take care of my kids. And, I've struggled with substance abuse and all sorts of things because I'm stressed out, about stability.
Right.
But in calmer moments, I can say to myself, well, this has been working now for a good 15 years,
I mean, I think you're at a point now, especially where there's a ton of people that look up to you, too, in the community.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you know that, it's probably going to make you blush, but, I mean, there are people that, they look at you and you're like, wow, I wish I could do that, or I wish I could play like him, or, I mean, especially seeing the way, over the past couple of years, your band has progressed. From when I think I first met you maybe in Newtown. Yeah. And then I think I saw you around. And then it was whoa, Tommy put it all together, Yeah. You got the band behind you, and you got the CD, and then it seemed like you have really good momentum right now.
Yeah, getting the band was a really big part of that. For years I was just hiring guys. I knew that I could get gigs, and I knew that I could assemble bands. And I knew that there are a million jazz musicians in St. Louis who need work.
Yeah.
Who are not frontmen.
Yeah.
Who can't lead a band, but are the most spectacular musicians you've ever heard. And they need work. And so I thought, well, I'm not afraid to put myself out there and to ask for gigs and stand up there and be the front man and take all the blame when everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And so I was able to hire musicians who were good. And that got me this far. Mm-hmm. And then Mark Wallace, who plays bass in my band, he was one of those guys I was just hiring. He was like, Tommy, you should just get a band. You should get a regular group of guys, and we should do this. Mm-hmm. And I was really apprehensive about it because Bands are tricky,
You can make way more money as a solo musician than you can a band.
You can, and things go wrong in bands.
Yeah.
You play with people, and then they become your friends, and you have an argument, and you're not friends with them anymore.
Right. Or they miss practice because they have other shit going on.
Right,
and
right.
You're like, hey man, we all put our time into this. What's going on with you? Or,
Totally.
Especially if you're all throwing money at it, and someone's throwing more money than the other person.
Right.
And then it's like, well, yeah, you might have written the song, but I threw $500 for the studio time, so it's like, where are we from here? And it's, the blood can get pretty thick and thin.
It really does.
Quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sad to say that, over the past 20 years, there are friends who I have lost because of spats. Over a gig, over some shitty gig in some shitty Southside club where we all made $4.
Yeah.
And now we're not friends anymore. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, what happened?
Actually, on Saturday morning, last summer, I had been a complete jerk to a bass player because he said he couldn't make it to a gig where we were each going to make about $13 or $14. And I woke up Saturday morning, I'm like, man, I'm wrong.
Right.
I'm being a jerk. And I sent him a little message. I was like, Mark, I'm really sorry, man. I was filtering your completely reasonable explanation for why you couldn't make the gig through my own anxiety.
Right.
And calling you the jerk, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that actually most people, if I come to them and tell you, look, man, I fucked up. I'm sorry. Most people will be like, okay. It's all good, water under the bridge.
Right.
Which is what this guy did, and I'm really grateful. Because he's one of my favorite musicians.
Right. Well, I think in terms of a successful band has to be that way, because that's just people and that's just relationships.
Yeah.
It's just gonna happen.
It's the honesty thing, man. It's the honesty thing. And bands have to be comprised of people who are willing to make it not a proficiency competition or an ego competition.
It's a weird little family too, It's like your family. Other than you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of mind power,
Yeah. Family is really the right word for it. I mean, to be honest, the community of musicians in St. Louis really know me much better than my actual family.
Yeah.
I see them more.
Right.
We spend way more time together. When I have a problem, they're the first ones to know, and they're the first ones to help me out.
Right.
Which isn't to say anything or to in any way dismiss my family. I have a wonderful family who's incredibly supportive.
Right.
I mean, I remember being like 19 years old, and my dad was like, well, what are you going to do with your life? I'm like, I'm going to play guitar. Yeah. That did not go over well.
Yeah, right.
And it was probably 10 years or more before he was like, okay, all right, accept this.
Right. They kind of have to at some point. They know you're not going to quit.
Yeah,
They wait forever for you to quit.
Well, Anthony, at this point, I'm 37.
Right.
I have no marketable skills except what I can do on this instrument.
Right.
I can hardly type. I know nothing about computers or this is all I can do.
I would say you've mastered it to a point.
No, it's funny you should say that, because
one never can master it.
No, we're all on this long road, and yeah, there's always somebody ahead of us, but there's always somebody ahead of me too, Nobody's mastered it, which is good.
Yeah.
Because if there was somebody who was winning, it's not me. Thankfully, it's not a competition.
It should be. Right now, I think it's a really weird time for music, and you've been through a couple of decades of it, at least gigging. Yeah. And now it's like, if you don't do 300 gigs a year, you're fucked. And it's like,
right.
It's like, who can do that? Who can have, it's so hard to have kids and to expect someone 300 times a year.
Yeah.
And I know, people go to their job 300 times a year, but it's different.
It is different.
Yeah. You're not putting up drywall, and you're not on the oil rig and you're not behind a desk, but it does take a lot of, you might be on stage for 2 hours, but 8 hours might have been involved in it.
Totally.
So what's your diagnosis in sort of the problem or even what's going on today with music? I think
it's a really interesting time as far as the music scene goes. not only in St. Louis, but in the world, just the technology has changed everything so much. And the diagnosis, I think
it's a really hard question because it's an impossible question to answer.
I think this is the golden age. I mean, to tell you the truth, I really do. I mean, this is a time, particularly in America, or maybe I only know St. Louis, so in St. Louis, where we have jazz and rock and hip hop and electronica and everything's sort of melding together, you know, and becoming a new super style of music, you know, that we have here in St. Louis.
And it's all, the thing about it, it's all free. Is that it's the greatest thing, and it's also the problem. Because,
right.
You know, maybe in the 60s, Tommy Holloran, you know, could have made a ton more money. And even by, like, I had a guy set up my guitar, and he was, you know, he gigged in the 70s, and he was like, bars offered me $100 in the 70s to play, and now they're offering me $100 in 2014, and it's like, you know.
Yeah, so, and that's a funny story, because Jeremy Siegelmoss from Bottoms of Blues Gang, I played with him for a long time, a few years back, and he said, man, you gotta quit doing these $50 gigs, because they were paying guys $50 in 1950, you know, and that's not okay for them to still be paying $50. And I do see that. However, there's the whole thing where it has to be an equitable arrangement for the venue and for the musicians and for everybody. And you know, I can't go to a restaurant that is struggling, and even if I think I'm worth $3 million, I can't milk them, you know. And really, paying dues. I gotta pay my dues. We all gotta pay our dues. I mean, just the literal sweat equity of being on stage.
Well, I remember someone said, you're looking for the super fan. You're looking for, even if you play to 8 people, if 2 of the people are going to follow you for the next 10 years, you know, if they're checking you out, what you do, and buying some of your stuff, that's what you're looking for. So that's the hope, if you're playing for $50, that someone will be that super fan and follow you on Twitter, you know?
Right. Yeah, and that's another aspect of it. Like, maybe the money at the clubs isn't the same, but the exposure is dramatically better than it was even 5 years ago. Like, I can put something up on Facebook, and, you know, immediately thousands of people...
They'll respond to it.
Yeah, they'll see it. And I no longer need a record company to represent me. You know, I no longer need a radio station to play me. I'm grateful to have KDHX. But I don't need these institutions to get my music out there. I do need to do it myself, which is a discipline that musicians, I think, are learning, you know?
Yeah, it's so because people don't know our brains aren't designed for that.
Right.
Like, you know, using a computer to some musicians is impossible.
Yeah.
I played with this girl named Jane, and she struggled with it.
Sure.
You know?
It's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It is hard.
You know, I think to be a musician today, you need to be this like jack of all trades. You need to know how to record yourself, which is really tough. People don't understand that. You need to be able to market yourself.
Social media.
And you need to actually be good, because right now there's so many people that can put perfect music out there.
Yes.
And that aren't really that good.
Yeah, this is maybe a tangent, but this perfect music thing I think is really interesting. We went into the studio and made our album, and we were debating whether or not to use metronome, because I had this idea, well, there's no reason to put out an imperfect album anymore, because now everybody can put out a perfect album. But then I went back and I listened to the Blue Weezer album, and that is an imperfect album that is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, it's the flawed nature of perfection.
Right.
Is really much more resonant with actual humans than some picture perfect, sonically profound, you know, and yet ultimately boring and dull.
Oh, totally.
Masterpiece.
I think, it's the imperfections of art which make it good.
Right.
I mean,
It's again the strengths and the weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, there's
if you remove the strength and the weaknesses, suddenly your strengths are gone too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been reading this book by Robert Greene, and one of the things is like turn shit into sugar. You know, what your weaknesses are, make them strengths, because that's what you got. And, you know, if you can only record on your iPhone, maybe that's the strength of your material. Because guess what? Everyone's putting studio shit out there, and eventually someone wants to go, oh, I just want to hear something that's sort of honest.
Honest.
Yes.
It all comes back to that, man. Honesty and work. You know, it's a job. It is a full-time job. I work more in my career in music than I ever did when I was punching the clock for somebody else. You know, you can phone it in for somebody else. You can't phone it in for yourself. You know, and so I mean, my day breaks down on my good days. A couple hours of practice, a couple hours of social media, a couple hours of walking around. You know, nothing is better for a band's success than to be supportive of other bands.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a community. If we were all clawing our way so that one person could stand on top of the mountain, there would be tens of thousands of losers. You know, and that's not acceptable, or it's not sustainable. It's not beneficial for a community.
Yeah, in an odd way, on a mass level, it is kind of like that. You know, I was talking to Susie Q, and we were talking about how, you know, you have a 1% in sort of society, but you also have the 1% of musicians. You know, you have you have Justin Bieber, for example, who, in my mind, I don't think makes very good music, but people love him and he's, you know, on top of the world. But I think it's totally different reasons, and it's not, you know.
Well, there's music as music, and there's music as industry.
Yeah.
And fortunately, unfortunately, you can flip that coin however you want. A lot of the music that's really successful is really designed to sell hair products, you know, and t-shirts and designer tennis shoes. And Justin Bieber, he's not my bit. Actually, if he walked in here right now singing this hit song, I wouldn't know him.
Right.
You know? I know nothing about him, honestly. But I see him as an emblem of a corporation.
Yeah.
He's a logo.
He's a manufactured product.
Right. And actually, I think that's really sad, because he's a kid, you know, and he's gonna grow up maybe not even knowing who he is.
Yeah.
Because somebody said, no, this is who you are. You're a representative of the record label.
Right.
You know, and that's, I don't know, he's a human being. He's a kid who gets screwed up in Florida and, you know, gets thrown in jail, and like, shit, if I were under that sort of pressure, I'd be in the same situation. And to tell you the truth, most musicians I know just haven't gotten caught.
Oh,
you
totally.
I should have been in jail.
A lot of us have.
Right, exactly. Yes, a lot of us have. Yeah.
How do you, when you wake up every day, do you try to write, or do you try to learn, or is it a combination of both? And how do you do it?
Well, it's good you asked me that. Writing is really hard for me. For whatever reason, in my teens and 20s, I could just dash out tunes like it was nothing. And as soon as I hit 30, I just stopped. And I think I'm kind of screwing myself. I think it's a head game, you know? Well, actually, I think it's a couple things. They say mathematicians are past 25 are done. You know, for whatever reason, the human brain handles math well early. And like Einstein, when he was older, he was useless. His ideas were wrong. Right. You know, when he was young is when he had his good ideas. And music is so similar to math, and maybe there's some correlation there, where we're more creative in our 20s. I've also heard that it's an evolutionary thing. Particularly men will be more creative in their 20s because they're just more likely to score and have kids, and you know, your genes go on. You know, when you hit 30, it's harder. But then when you look at novelists, it's different. It's rare to find a novelist who wrote his best book before he was 50.
Right.
You know, but novelists and musicians have different disciplines. So the discipline of songwriting is something I'm forcing myself back into. And by that, I mean, I have to sit on the floor. When I play guitar, I sit on the floor. Because, you know, Indian style, I just always have. I have to sit there and suck at writing a song for a while. And that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to try something and not be able to do it. But the only way through it is through it. You know, there's no way around it. If I'm going to write a song, there are going to be these uncomfortable periods where I'm like, God, I hate this song. I'm no good, you know?
It's how much you love the idea. If you love the idea,
right,
you'll just hammer it. I've hammered songs for over a year, you know, over 2 years. I'll come back to
10
it.
years.
Yeah.
That's my average.
Right.
At this point, it takes me about 10 years to write a song. Yeah. When I was a kid, I could write a song in 20 minutes.
Right.
You know, and it's different now. I think I've set the bar for myself in my own head so high that I can't really do it, you know? Which reminds me, this trombone player told me once about practicing. He said, look, just set the bar really low. Just play a major scale for an hour, you know? Do something that you know you can do, and you will do it. But, and, you know, I wrote a couple songs that I really love. And now, if I don't write a song on that same level, you know, I don't want any part of it.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
I really should just write every song through to completion, and then the ones that suck, I just toss them out the window, you know?
Right. I don't know. For me, it's like I always, when that happens, I'm like, well, maybe I'll try to write some jazz, you know, or I'll try to do something which I completely can't do, and then I'll try to like take the idea and bringing it back.
Yeah.
But it's really hard. I mean, it's really hard to turn on that sector of your brain. And I remember the other day, I got home from work and I was just so tired and I was trying. I just couldn't do it. It was like, this is not happening.
Yeah, and I'm quick to give up now. When I was young, I was hell-bent on learning how to play the guitar. And one of the things that I decided to do in my teens was write songs that I couldn't play. And then make myself figure out how to play them. And that made me a better musician. Now I kind of have some chops. You know, I can kind of play everything I write, you know? So that inspiration for writing to make myself a better musician isn't there anymore. That's stupid, because I can always be better at this thing, and I should probably do that again.
Do you think it will be like, I remember talking to a musician, we were talking about Pokey Lafarge, and your name came in because he plays a very stylistic form of music, and so do you. Do you think it'll ever be something where you're like, I'm gonna stop playing jazz for a little bit and try to like switch up your game, or do you think you're just honed in, or you just love it so much that you won't stop it?
Well, let me think. About jazz, I am very reluctant to call myself a jazz musician, especially if I'm standing next to somebody I think of as a jazz musician, you know? Because I know that there are things that I can't do that most jazz musicians can do. I grew up on the style of music, so it's what naturally comes out when I write a song. It tends to be what people think of as jazz. That's just a part of me. I can't really see myself moving away from that. Not that I would be opposed to it, you know. I like all kinds of music. Well, there's two kinds of music, right? Duke Ellington said. There's good music and that other kind, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll always write the former, you know? But styles are, especially in this day and age, just not
important.
No, they're really not. This is the area, this is the time when genres are just gone, you know? Everything's just sort of going out the window.
I kind of think society as a whole is like that too.
Yeah.
Which is why I was like, it's a really cool time to be a musician because it's like the Wild West.
Yeah.
And society is like that as a whole too. It's, you could go to college and spend, you know, 50 grand in your college career and get out and not have a job.
Very true.
Because the world is changing so rapidly, no one can keep up.
Right.
Yeah. Or you could, you know, be a medical marijuana grower in Colorado and be 22 and be a millionaire right now.
Exactly.
And it's just insane. It's insane to try to adjust music to that environment as well.
It is. Yeah.
I was listening to Nick Cannon and he was like, because he's putting out an album now, but I listen to Howard Stern all the time. But Nick Cannon was like, music in 10 years is all be free. It's just the way it's going. It's just going to be free.
It is.
Yeah.
It's essentially free already.
It is, yeah.
And with Pandora and Spotify and YouTube. You know, if I need to learn a song, the first place I go is YouTube. You know, and there's 12 versions I can hear. Take my pick.
Yeah, it's great because you can do that, but in the same sense, it's like, you know, I hate it because an artist can go, hey man, someone's ripping me off, or someone put my album up there, and they're like, oh, we don't know anything about it.
Right.
So.
My suspicion is that the exposure of it more than makes up for not being able to sell a few pieces here and there.
Right.
I think being able to have a few thousand people hear a song is way better than me making, a few bucks off of a couple hundred people here.
Yeah.
I would much rather have the exposure, and I think that will lead to more opportunities. Live musicians make money playing live. Record companies make money selling records.
Mm-hmm.
Now these things are sort of, as the record companies dissolve, live musicians are making money playing music live and selling records.
Mm-hmm.
So I think although the internet is not monetized for the individual independent musician, the opportunities are tenfold what they were 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's just life isn't fair, and that's the nature of everything.
Yeah, deal with it. Yeah.
Well, do you want to play a tune, or?
Yeah, I'd like to play a tune.
Yeah.
All right, let me think. Okay, so I'm thinking a lot about honesty, right? Because that whole honesty competition thing, man. Did I tell you that already?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just really, it just hit me hard, man. So, all right, I got a song. If I knock at your door in the middle of the night, don't pretend I'm not there. Don't send your dog a barking and pull the blankets up over your head, 'cause it's cold on the steps of your daddy's house. The wind blows right through midnight. I'm so scared I'll disappear in the clouds if I can't hold on to you with all my might. So don't be shy now, don't be coy. You ought to know I'm not that kind of boy. If you're thinking that we're all through, honey, I got news for you. Oh man, my voice, sorry man. I'm gonna stick through that. I won't lie to you, honey. I'm gonna lie to you plenty. I'm gonna lie and grind your little heart to dust. I'll be walking down the street with sparklers in my teeth as a cancer eats my bones to rust. I dig my hands into my pockets, run my fingers round the contents, pennies and nickels and cigarette butts, of course. I put everything I'm worth on an old and broken horse, drink the winnings in a pint of remorse. Don't be shy now, don't be coy. You ought to know I'm not that kind of boy. If you're thinking that we're all through, honey, have I got news for you.
Wonderful.
Thanks, man. My voice is not holding up on that
It's
one.
okay, it was honest.
It was very honest. Yes, very true.
I love the way you do chord changes. It's
Thanks, man.
It's totally your superpower.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also my greatest weakness, It keeps me from, grass is always greener,
Right.
I see cats like Dave Black, and he's he's everywhere on the neck. And
not everyone can be Jimi Hendrix, and
no.
Not everyone can be Tommy Holloran either.
Right. So,
how did you come about that song? How did you write that?
Well,
is it about somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I liked this one girl a whole lot. I went to her house late at night and knocked on the door, and the dog came barking, and the lights went out, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I was heartbroken, you know, and it's a terribly sad song.
Yeah.
And also kind of creepy, you know, to be that dude standing on the girl's doorstep. But shit, you know, men in their early 20s are heart-sick creatures, you know, who will make probably some bad decisions sometimes.
Pretty bad decision.
Yeah, right. Yes. But I think a lot of people, it's real. Anyway, it's what I did, and I know a lot of people who've done things like that, and it resonates. And I have a student who wrote a song recently, and she said, well, I don't know if you're going to like it, it's really sad. And I said, Tara, sad songs are way better than happy songs, you know? Because when you're happy, you feel great, you know? You don't need music. But when you're sad, man.
That's when you need it the most.
Nothing reaches you like music.
Right.
You know? And a sad song is somehow will make me feel better.
Yeah.
I've never really understood that. It's the irony of the blues. It's this terribly depressing music that somehow makes me feel better.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Never understood it.
It's a weird thing, like, Elliott Smith wrote really, really sad music. Yeah. And some people hate it. And some people, he's the greatest musician of all time to them. And I think, you know, it's a really easy emotion to tap into. Yeah. And sometimes, especially when you're first starting out, it's almost a little too easy. But to be refined like that, and to, I went through a period where just like, I'm not writing a sad song. Yeah. And it's like, once I came back to it, it was like, oh my gosh, this sad song's so much stronger. They are strong. Because I was able to not do it for a while. So I think some of the problem with people that, like, they pick up the guitar and they write, you know, the love song that's the sad song. Right. It's the easiest thing to tap into. Totally. For me, it's really hard to write that happy, like, poppy, upbeat song. And
I've had too many girlfriends in my life, and they all want me to write a song for them. Yeah. It's like, well, you gotta wait till after we break up, because when we're together, I'm feeling good. I can't write the, oh, you're so pretty, let's hold hands at the time, you know. Like, well, you know, I might feel that way, but I can't put that to music for some reason.
What would you say people are your biggest influences sort of now and even today? Like, who gets your rocks off and sort of inspires you to do more work?
There's a woman named Elaine Mandel, and I met her a long time ago, 13 years ago. She came into my coffee shop and traded me a CD for a magazine, and I didn't listen to the CD for a month, and then I listened to it, and it changed my life. And I saw her again about 2 months ago. And her music is really, really me. You know, somehow she's writing me, you know, and she's my favorite out there right now. I also really love bands that frighten me, you know, that shake me up, shake up my expectations. The band Demon Lover here in St. Louis, again, just rocked me to my core. I saw them and I was terrified. Like, oh my God, this is incredible music. I want to be uncomfortable, you know? Music is, for me, what it is soothing to play, but when I listen to music, I want the edge, you know?
Yeah, I was listening to Joe Rogan, and he was talking about taking a weed brownie and going into his isolation tank, and the guy was like, doesn't that freak you out? He's like, I want to freak out. Yeah. You know, it's like, I like freaking out.
Right. Media, last night I was talking to somebody and they said, how are things going? I'm like, well, you know, ups and downs. Yeah. And the person said, good. Because if you were just level, you'd be bored out of your skull. And I was like, yeah, you know, I would be, you know. I don't know if I intuitively have these ups and downs because I'm, you know, fleeing boredom, or if because I've just made enough bad decisions to have some downs and good luck to have some ups. I don't know. But every human experiences every emotion every day. Yeah. You know, and my job as a musician is to put the most pressing thing that I feel right now onto this and through a microphone. You know, that's it. Not necessarily for anybody else. I mean, it's something I have to do for myself. And I think other people relate to it. I think a musician's success has directly to do with how much other people can relate to that musician.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I mean, if people are not responding to what you're doing something wrong.
That's right.
So, and that's, it's a weird thing because some people, I mean, like a person like Nick Drake, no one responded to him in his time.
Right.
And I certainly wouldn't say he's doing something wrong.
No.
He was doing something wrong for the time period, but it was right for himself.
Okay, so this is great. We've talked about Elliott Smith and Nick Drake, you know, two men who killed themselves.
Yeah.
And whose music moves us. And then we're talking about Justin Bieber, who will probably live to be 107,
right.
You know, but does not move us in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Because maybe, and again, I don't know him or his hit song, but it's not, I don't know, I shouldn't say anything.
I know, I think it's really hard to talk shit on somebody's art or music. And it's almost like I really try not to do it, but I think sometimes it's good to declare that art is sort of bad. I mean, I think, I remember this one show I played, it was with a rock band, and the band before us was talking about rape and poop and all sorts of shit, and I was just like, you know what, dude, this is just bad. And this is what I gotta call it.
I had this realization. I saw a band about a year ago. And the singer was on stage and he said, I come from Nashville, Tennessee, home of some of the best music in the world and home of some of the worst music in the world. And I thought to myself, so you get to decide for everybody what's good and bad? And the reality is, it's a subjective thing. What sounds good to me is good. And what sounds bad to me is bad. And we all get to decide. And so if you didn't like it, it's bad, you know?
Right.
And if somebody else liked it, then it was good. But everybody gets to decide for themselves. There's no rule book. There's no constitution for music. There's no prison where they send you, you know?
No.
You know? Except maybe...
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right. Words right out of my mouth. Yeah. It's a very individual thing. Yeah.
Do you want to play another one?
Yeah, I'd like to. Now, I'm going to play this song by the same girl. How about that? There's this one woman who I never dated, but I ended up writing a lot of songs for her. I grow gardenias for Rita in my one-room apartment downtown. In the window overlooking 5th Street, I sing to them love songs for Rita and gardenias, white as a shoulder in May. Soft as my praise, she'll notice me here someday. I don't know how to tell her, I cannot find the words. So I sing the scent of gardenias on the soft summer wind to her. Gardenias for Rita, gardenias for Rita. When I have the courage, I will say, I grow gardenias for Rita in my one-room apartment downtown. In the window overlooking 5th Street, I sing to them love songs for Rita and gardenias, white as a shoulder in May. So I sing the scent of gardenias on the soft summer wind to gardenias for Rita, gardenias for Rita. When I have courage, I will sing. I will say I love you, Rita.
Amazing.
There it is. Thanks, man. Again, these are both songs that I wrote in my early 20s, and I'm trying to get back to that level of songwriting, which has been hard. When I started learning jazz tunes, it became harder to come up with my own ideas also.
Really?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Crazy.
I don't know. Well, I think the stuff that you're putting out there today sounds great.
No, thanks. I like it. I think I'm...
The Gorilla Swing, that's all your stuff, right? Or is it other, or is it...
The album has 10 songs that I wrote, and a few, like 3 of them are new, 7 of them are old, and then it has 3 standards on it. So I set a goal for myself for the rest of this year, beginning in April, to write 1 song a month. You know, in high school, I could write a term paper in a matter of hours. So I should be able to write a 3-minute song in a month, you know. So that's my goal, is to write 1 song a month. And my plan to make that happen is to just sit on this floor until it's done.
Nice.
I can do that.
You can do that.
I can do that.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then you can put out an album, you think?
Yeah, I've been thinking about the new album. We just put out the latest album in January.
Mm-hmm.
So I know most musicians who are really out there working do an album a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
You know, I think I can write 10 or 12 good songs in a year if I apply myself. Yeah. But it's gonna be a lot less fucking around. You know?
Right.
Yeah, I can screw off in bookstores and coffee shops for the rest of my life.
Right.
To no great advantage.
Right.
Right.
But I don't know. I think, from what I can perceive, it's a solid path, especially with the new stuff and the Gorilla Swing album. It's sort of all coming together. Maybe you don't. Maybe,
it is.
You know, I don't know. Maybe it's really easy to be hard on yourself, I think.
Well, again, I am hard on myself, but or maybe I'm just acutely aware of my strengths and weaknesses. We all know, you know. I mean, we are our own best critics or worst critics. Best critics, worst critics, maybe it's the same thing. I'm not sure. Lost my train of thought.
It's okay. All right.
Yeah. Things are coming together now, not because I've started writing great songs, but because I've been so relentless. Because I've just been so persistent. And a lot of that has to do with just so not gonna go get a job. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm just absolutely opposed to punching a clock for somebody else.
Well, it takes. I mean, I do that right now, and it's like, you know, at the end of the day, you're just so beat to shit that any creative ounce or any ounce you have to do anything else, it's so hard. And you know, a lot of musicians struggle with that because they have to do something on the side to fund their art, and then their art doesn't turn out as good, and then it's this sort of cycle of failure.
Yeah, right.
So,
plan B becomes plan A before you know it.
I totally know where you're coming from on that.
Yeah. It's jumping off a cliff to do it, you know? And I mean, and really, it cost me my marriage. I mean, when my son had just been born when I was like, he's 7 now, when I told my wife, I'm quitting my job and I'm only going to play music. And I knew that was something I had to do. Mm-hmm. I've always known my entire life that this is who I am. But it's hard for people who have other expectations from me. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard for them to accept that. And it will always be hard for them. But that's their cross to bear.
They're on a different path.
Yeah, that's not my problem.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't mean it's easy, you know, and it was terribly sad to lose the marriage and to have the concern, I can just see the concern on my father's face, you know, for years when I come home and he'd be like, oh man.
What the fuck's he up to now?
Exactly, right. But it's coming together now. Not because I've been lucky, although I have been lucky. Mostly because I just won't give up.
Yeah.
I can't.
Don't give up, man.
No.
And Tommy, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
It was really fun. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I hope we do this again.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.